I teach here at the Army War College. I'm very interested in strategy, national security, strategic thinking, foreign policy decision making. My own particular interest is in sort of Indian foreign and security policy. That's sort of my main interest, but I get curious about many things in part of our curriculum and my own research. That's sort of the narrow focus, if you will. One of the things that I got fascinated early on in graduate school was how different countries, different societies, how do they make their way in the international system? So we tend to have certain similarities, similar challenges that countries, the United States, India, Russia, Japan, whatever they're dealing with the international system. But we also have the geography, the history, the political culture of these societies, which also has a large impact on how they make their way. So things that you see that the United States does, or Japan or Britain or France or Russia might look different, in Japan or some of these, Brazil or these other countries. So I was very interested in why that was and what types of effects, what things would be similar, what things would be different, and how does that help us in terms of the practicality, understanding why some countries do things that don't make sense for us as an outsider, but maybe given their own particular background, history, local politics, if you will, geography, would then actually make sense if we understood it. That can help us as we interact with, friends, adversaries, and so on in the international system. I teach in the regional studies here, particularly interested in India. I mean, one source of frustration that often happens for the United States is, during the Cold War, while we weren't adversaries, we were sort of on opposite sides of the Cold Wars. India was closer to the Soviet Union, and we were on, the other side. Since the end of the Cold War, the United States and India have converged more into more cooperation, deeper relationship. But this is sometimes with fits and starts, and sometimes there's times where the United States, particularly in the military side, we'd like to have greater engagement with India, and we get the sense that the Indian government sometimes is a little more reticent to have these close ties. Understanding the history there is important. So the Indian bureaucracy, Indian political leadership remembers that we were very close to Pakistan during the Cold War, and so that had an impact on viewing us as sort of the supporter of their main adversary. We might think for us that's ancient history. That's was another time, another place, but for a lot of the Indian leadership, that's still something that they carry with them. Another one as well is unlike a lot of other countries that got independence from their sort of the decolonization process. India did it without military force. India did it without a violent revolution. And so the Indian leadership initially, the Cold War, didn't include sort of military leaders. And so there's also as well a kind of that Gandhian sort of nonviolent tradition. I think you could exaggerate that a bit. But there is a sort of reticence in some of the political class in India about having too large of a role for the military and foreign policy. So sometimes the United States can sometimes find that frustrating because the Indian bureaucracy in particular is sort of adverse to what they term muscle flexing. We don't do that. I mean, you as Americans, you do that. India, we're not interested in having a very large sort of forward muscular hard power presence. And so that can be just a way that the background, the history, the culture affects how they interact internationally, which is a bit different than our experience. I've had many of my students who have tried interacting, want to have more cooperation, say with India, and sometimes they find it frustrating. So in a sense, giving them the background of why there might be a degree of suspicion or a degree of reticence about deeper relations with the United States gives them a greater appreciation that maybe things don't move as fast sometimes as we would like. Often people say the United States, we're often, because of our electoral system, you've got 4 years, people want to get in, make a big difference. Other countries, maybe, they're moving on a slightly different timeline, if you will. They might want to move a little bit slower than we will. And then we've got to learn how to deal with that. We've got to learn how to achieve the things that we would like, but having an understanding of what the other country, the other cultures are interested in, how they might perceive things is also important if we want to make our way and achieve the things that we would like to do. History, politics, geography, these things matter. And so although we talk about living in a globalized world, we talk about technology, the internet, all of these things sort of erasing these barriers, and we tend to be a country that's very forward-looking about the future, we should think about how politics, history, geography really matters in setting the context. Not to say that we're imprisoned by these things, but they do impact how things will happen in the future. And I think we're not always cognizant of that, being a country that's separated separated by two big oceans from a large part of the world, and also being very wedded to technology and the idea of the future.